Ade, maybe a good place to start would be if you could share some aspects of your personal story and your background and the path that led to you co-founding Base10.
Absolutely. Before starting Base10 and going fully to the investment side, I was an entrepreneur. The Ade is short for Adeyemi. That's a Nigerian name, but the accent gives away that I grew up in Spain. Although I spent my early childhood in Nigeria, we moved to Spain when I was very young. I'm from Nigerian father and Spanish mother. And I went to college in Spain, and that's where I started my first company. So I grew up coding, and back in 2005, when I was in my senior year, after trying about 25 different projects that went to nothing, one of them took off, and it turned into a company called 20, which became essentially the equivalent of Facebook in Spain. We were very lucky, and that company got acquired a few years later by Telefónica, which is the largest telecom company in Spain. And right after that, having such a good experience at a young age, I decided, well, I want to try this again, but this time in Silicon Valley. So I moved here now 12 years ago, initially to study my MBA at Stanford, but really with the idea of starting another company. And at graduation, 2 years later, I was lucky enough to start two simultaneously with two different classmates, one in San Francisco and one in Latin America. The one in San Francisco was an artificial intelligence company called Identified that will help companies decide who to hire based on data. And that ended up being a very good run, and we sold 4 years later to Workday. It was actually Workday's first acquisition. And the one in Latin America that I helped start, but I didn't run full time. My co-founder likes to say that is today a $2 billion company precisely because I didn't run it full time. But I was hopefully helpful to him. And it's called Cabify. It's today the equivalent of Uber in Latin America. And after that experience, and contemplating about whether to join Workday full-time as part of the acquisition, I got a very good opportunity to help start the corporate venture fund of Workday called Workday Ventures. And I had been investing personally on the side of entrepreneurship, essentially since I moved here. I had done about 20 or 30 investments at the time, but I decided to take that opportunity and really love it because I see investing or early stage investing as the next best thing to starting your own company, is helping others that hopefully find your experience somewhat useful. So I was essentially hooked, did Workday Ventures for about 2 years, and got lucky enough to have my first investment in Workday Ventures being my current Base10 co-founder, TJ, who has essentially the opposite background as me. He grew up in LA, started as an investor in Summit, Accel, and Cotu before turning an entrepreneur in a company also in the job space called Jobber. And once he sold that to Monster 2 years after the Workday investment, we had gotten to know each other very well. And we decided, hey, we have complementary skill sets. We love working with each other, and we see an opportunity to do things a little bit differently. So why don't we do this together? And I want to point out that, Alan, actually, you are one of the very first persons that I brainstormed with back in the day, if the world needed another venture capital fund while I was still at Workday Ventures.
I remember that well. And you didn't mention this, but I'll say it as well. You also have an MBA from Stanford, a JD in law, a master's in economics, and I believe also a machine learning certificate from Stanford. So you've been very busy.
I have been very busy. I've also been, very lucky of having been able to go to those places and have the opportunities to meet wonderful people. So yeah, overall, definitely not getting bored.